We are in day 5 of the State versus Hannah Gutierrez, the armor on the set of Rust, where Alec Baldwin fatally shot the cinematographer Helena Hutchins. Yesterday afternoon, we ended off with the star witness against Hannah Gutierrez being Hannah Gutierrez. Hannah's police interviews and body cam statements are what's coming into court right now. I know that the prosecution has a ton of witnesses left, but I'm surprised they didn't leave this to closer till the end because Hannah's interviews are damning. Some of the things that were crucial to me is she acknowledges that safety concerns can come up on a set and it is her job. She is supposed to check those and protect against those. She said that she wished she had checked the rounds more. She said, I shake the dummies most of the time, the dummy round ammunition, most of the time. You're the armorer on set. You're supposed to do it like 3 times or 7 times when you need to do it 2 times. Most of the time is not all of the time. And most of the time seems like a very truthful statement. Why? Because a live round ended up in a gun on set. Sure, her demeanor is relaxed, kind of joking. It's something to watch. And this is in the second interview with her attorney after she knows A, Helena Hutchins is dead, and B, how the public feels about it. These videos are very difficult for her. Her attorneys have had these since they were done. Her attorney was sitting in the room when this happened, and she made quite a lot of admissions. And the thing about speaking to the police and the thing about being read your Miranda rights is they say anything in court can and will be used against you. You are going to watch how the prosecution uses statements like, I hate myself that this happened and this is the worst fucking day of my life. Those statements are going to be twisted into the prosecution's argument that this is not her feeling bad for her. This is her knowing how guilty she is. This is not just self-loathing and I had a bad day at work. This is guilt. And these are admissions of guilt. These are immediate state of mind admissions of guilt because she knows it was her job to prevent this from happening and it happened. So when they say anything can and will be used against you in court, it absolutely will. And it will be used against you in the light least favorable to you. In her interview, she also seems to present, and this is my summary, as she perceives herself as a badass bitch. Now, as a 24-year-old, I was already a district attorney. I was in a high demand profession, a high responsibility profession. I also viewed myself as a badass bitch. And so I understand when she's saying, I have a strong personality. She said that in her interviews. And I did not watch these interviews before the trial because I didn't want to know what was happening. I didn't want to know what was coming. I wanted to watch it with you. I was ready to go on this roller coaster with y'all. But when she is presenting herself as a vocal, badass armorer, as a woman with a strong personality, how in the world is her defense attorney's argument that she was a helpless, powerless woman in this industry? How is that the argument that you're going to take after watching her say in her own words that that's not true? Because now the attorney and her are fighting each other. Her own words are fighting her attorney because the way she's presenting herself is not the way her attorney is presenting her. And we know sometimes bravado is there to overcome the fact that we are ultimately not the ones in power. But that nuance isn't going to play to the jury when at the end of the day, she's the armorer and it's her job to check the bullets that go into the gun. And she says things like, I wish I would have checked them more. I'm a very strong and vocal personality and I shake all of the dummies most of the time. And I very much wonder why the defense attorneys were arguing that it was Sarah Zachary that emptied out the weapon Baldwin had, when in Hannah Gutierrez's interview, she says that she checked it, that she had it after Baldwin had it, that she emptied it and she put everything on the cart. You know what else was on the cart? Live rounds were on the cart. Live rounds were on the cart. She corrected the police, by the way. She corrected the police in her interview. One of the officers said 2 people got shot and she's like, no, I checked the gun. Only 1 round was missing. She knew it was a through and through and then a shot from one bullet. She just didn't know the order of how people were standing because she wasn't in the church. But she said she emptied the gun. The defense attorney, I now believe, the defense attorney has misled us, and I am now less than pleased because your client's statements have proven to me that something you told me in your opening is not true. Why are you lying to me? Why are you lying to me that Sarah Zachary emptied that gun and destroyed evidence and threw it away when your client says to the police she emptied the gun and put the rounds back on the cart and live rounds are found on the cart? Sir, that misstates the evidence, and I am not pleased about it. This morning, we have still been going through the third interview with Hannah Gutierrez Reed that was done on November 9th, 2021. So not too long after the October 21st fatal shooting, but sometime after the shooting and after the memorials for Helena Hutchins had happened. The defendant has again admitted that she is the one who emptied out the gun after the fatal shooting happened in the church, that she loaded the gun before, that she showed Dave Halls just the back of the cylinder, didn't pull out each individual round and shake them, that there was a strange box of dummies that appeared on set and the box rattled. And she said, I shook each one, but it was unclear if she really took each one out of the box and shook it. Because then she says later in the interview that after the fatal shooting, she emptied out the 6-shooter that Baldwin had. She says she gave those cartridges to Sarah Zachary. In a different interview, she said she put them on the prop weapon cart. But she also says that she told Sarah Zachary to go check the box of ammo she had pulled from that day that was supposed to be dummy rounds. And Sarah told her, quote, from her interview, half of them are, quote, bad ones. So she assumed that meant up to half of that box of dummies was live rounds because they weren't shaking like a dummy round should, because they should have a little BB in it so you know it's a completely inert round. That was interesting information. That's not what's been determined by the FBI and others, but the fact that this armorer whose job it is to distinguish the bullets is asking the prop person to distinguish what all those are is very interesting to me. She definitely had some strong words for Sarah Zachary. It is interesting as we continue going through this interview how perception of this defendant is shifting. It's not a sympathetic interview. It is a very casual interview. She is very relaxed about the fact that she had ammo all over her pockets and some of it was in this bag and that bag and it was just kind of everywhere. And yes, she was in charge of the guns, but sometimes they didn't get locked up over lunch. And you know, it was a busy set and she didn't lock up the weapons all the time. So it's not a good interview for her. It's the strongest evidence against her. And it's really the first time at day 5 in trial that we are seeing evidence specifically against her, where we're not just talking about how Alec Baldwin may or may not have fired the weapon. We're actually getting down to how did these rounds get on set? And Hannah Gutierrez Reed in her interview said she brought some of her ammo onto set from another project she had worked on. The afternoon of day 5 of the Rust trial is where everyone decided that they weren't actually lawyers anymore and were bickering with one another in the courtroom nonstop. Have I sort of forgotten what witnesses happened? Yes. I think the rails came off with the cross-examination of the lead investigator who, for me, came off very evasive in some of her answers. The cross started very strong with pointing out that she had said conflicting things. And she was like, yeah, I guess I said it this way, then said it that way. Then they went down an entire rabbit hole about whether Hannah said the gun was unloaded over the prop cart or near the prop cart or unloaded in the church and then handed off to Sarah Zachary. And they spent so long on that and fighting back and forth over the transcript that I completely forgot everything else that happened in the cross-examination of the lead investigator. But a lot of it had to do, did you investigate this? Did you investigate that? Why didn't you do this? This search warrant happened later, to try to point out that the investigation might not have been following other leads. The redirect of that came in pretty hot with, you've talked to Mr. Baldwin, you've talked to Mr. Bowles, and insinuating, no, I think she directly said that the defense attorney was trying to have the lead investigator talk to other witnesses to put the blame on them or pin the blame on them, which was very interesting. The courtroom decorum this afternoon absolutely fell apart, and the attorneys were just snapping at each other. The prosecutor was giving soliloquies in front of the jury. The prosecutor on the later witness, Miss Pickle, who was the line producer, was just reading text messages that weren't admitted into evidence in her questions in a very leading fashion and inappropriate fashion in front of the jury. It was absolutely a wild afternoon. Chat's exhausted. I'm exhausted. You're exhausted. The judge, in trying to rein this courtroom in the most minimal fashion, said, I let you all have coffee. Can we please just move on? I'm like, Your Honor, it's time to admonish all of the attorneys, because I've never seen courtroom decorum like this. I've never seen speaking objections that aren't an objection. At one point, the prosecutor said, excuse me, Your Honor, I'm confused. He's just doing this, and then was yelling at the defense attorney. You better have read every word of that. My brain is discombobulated, because what we witnessed this afternoon was such a far departure from a civil and organized and orderly courtroom. And I wonder if the jury is sitting there embarrassed and questioning what they've just seen. I don't know about y'all. I kind of had a headache. Nothing seems clear. And it almost takes away from how damaging Hannah Gutierrez's interviews with law enforcement were. It completely derailed. Those interviews maybe should have been left till a little later on in this trial, and we will see what happens tomorrow on day 6. For deep dives into the stories that I covered here, you can find them on my YouTube channel at The Emily D. Baker and The Emily Show podcast. I stream every Tuesday and Thursday. The podcast goes live on Wednesdays. And if you want to stay in the loop with everything I'm doing, receive the fastest notifications out there, and get more Law Nerd community, join me at lawnerdapp.com, our free app for iOS and Android.